None of the passengers or crew who stepped on the Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 on November 24th, 1971 were expecting the evening to be very eventful. It was a short 30-minute flight from Portland to Seattle, and even though the weather outside looked ominous, there was no reason to think that the plane wouldn't reach its destination safely. After all, the next day was Thanksgiving, and so everyone on board was hoping for smooth travel without interruptions before the holiday. But that day, the threat to passengers and crew members were not rain or lightning. Instead, everyone's plans were about to be dramatically disrupted by a quiet man sitting in seat 18C. The man had not drawn any attention when he walked up to the ticket counter at Portland International Airport and paid for a one-way ticket to land at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Even those who did speak with the man, who identified himself at the ticket counter under the name Dan Cooper, described him in unremarkable terms. For someone whose name was about to become an iconic part of American criminal lore, Cooper seemed to have very little about him to remember. He was an average white male in his mid-40s. He had dark hair and brown eyes, showed up to the airport wearing a business suit with a white shirt, a thin black tie, black trench coat, and brown shoes. Importantly, though, Cooper had not arrived at the airport empty-handed. Instead, he got on the plane carrying a briefcase and a brown paper bag. Around 3 p.m., the man calling himself Dan Cooper settled into his seat on board the Boeing 727. He ordered himself a cocktail, a bourbon, and a 7-Up, and he chatted with the flight attendant named Florence Schaffner when she brought the drink to him. For a little while, Cooper waited in his seat as the plane took to the skies. He drank his bourbon and smoked Raleigh cigarettes. Just when he decided that the plane had reached a high enough altitude, he kicked his plan into action. First, Cooper signaled for the flight attendant, Schaffner. She asked him what he needed. He slid her a pre-typed note. Now, Schaffner didn't immediately look at the note. Instead, she folded up the paper and put it in her pocket. Cooper saw her do this and decided to give a crucial piece of advice. Said, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." And after she read Cooper's note, he carefully opened his briefcase and revealed that it was filled with a collection of red sticks that looked like dynamite. Attached to the cylinders were a wire and a large cylindrical battery. One element of D.B. Cooper's mystery has always been whether he actually had real explosives or if the sticks of dynamite were fake. People have taken both sides of the debate, but the only thing that really matters is that the bombs in the briefcase looked real enough to convince the flight attendant that Cooper was not bluffing. And after Cooper showed Schaffner the briefcase claiming to hold explosives, he set his next phase of the plan into motion. Still communicating through a series of pre-printed notes, the man with the explosives revealed his demands to the flight attendant. Schaffner took a quick look at the note, then calmly walked to the cockpit to reveal the demands of the hijacker to the pilot. The demands were pretty straightforward. Cooper wanted the plane to land at the Seattle airport, but not until 5 p.m. By the time they landed, he wanted the rest of his demands to already have been met and be waiting for him at the airport. This included $200,000 in American currency to be delivered in a backpack, along with 4 parachutes, 2 front parachutes, 2 back parachutes. Now, the 4 parachutes is an important detail because it implied that Cooper was thinking about keeping either passengers or crew with him as hostages. Now, it's a small detail, but it shows just how well thought out Cooper's plan was. The authorities that provided the parachute thought that they would be used by innocent hostages, and they would make sure that the chutes worked and that they weren't defective. And this is something they might not care about if they knew only Cooper himself would be using them. He also said that there should be a refueling truck waiting on the runway to refuel the plane. He told Schaffner that if everything went smoothly, the hostages would be released in Seattle. If not, he'd blow up the plane and save the lives of everyone on board. And after Schaffner had taken the note to the cockpit to inform the pilot of the plans, Cooper did not want to sit in the cabin alone. Instead, he demanded a different flight attendant named Tina Mucklow take Schaffner's place in the seat beside him. After Cooper's demands were relayed to the authorities on the ground, a mad scramble began to accommodate all the hijackers' requests. Within 30 minutes, the plane was in the air over Seattle, but the government agents coordinating from the ground weren't ready for it to land yet. Instead, the plane was forced to circle the airport for the next 2 hours, just waiting for the call that ground control was prepared for the hostage exchange. And in order to make sure that panic did not spread amongst the passengers, Tina sat next to Cooper for the next 2 hours and chatted with him as if he was an old friend. He asked her where she was from, and she told him Minnesota. When she asked about him, though, he grew angry and refused to answer. During these 2 hours, Tina Mucklow also managed to observe a few interesting details about the man with the bomb that have become some of the only clues to his possible identity. First, she noticed how familiar he seemed to be with the locals. As he looked out the window, he correctly pointed out landmarks he saw in the distance, including the city of Tacoma, Washington, and the nearby McChord Air Force Base. This detail gave rise to many later theories around suspects who had a history in the military, including some that he might have served out of the Air Force Base itself. As the minutes turned to hours, Cooper's calm and pleasant demeanor began to fall away into frustration. The time reached 5:15, already past the 5 o'clock window that he had demanded, and he started to get upset that his terms were taking too long to be met. Mucklow tried to keep him calm and explain that everyone was doing the best that they could to get him what he wanted. Finally, a few minutes after Cooper's outburst of frustration, the captain relayed a message to him through Tina. Everything on the ground was prepared, and the flight was ready to go down. They touched down at Seattle International Airport at 5:45 Pacific time. Still using Mucklow as the go-between, the pilot and Cooper agreed to land the plane at an unused runway a good distance away from the terminal. Once the plane was on the ground, Cooper informed Tina that she was the only person he trusted to act as the intermediary between him and the agents. As the plane began refueling, she walked out of the front door to a car waiting nearby. When she got to the car, Tina took hold of a white canvas money bag and carried it back to Cooper. The hijacker opened the bag and looked through its contents. Then, satisfied that the money was there, he told her the passengers could get off the plane. One by one, passengers walked off into safety, still not realizing the danger that they had been under for the last few hours. It wasn't until hours later, when the FBI conducted interviews with the passengers, that many learned the true nature of what had happened up in the skies above Seattle. As the passengers were departing, Tina Mucklow finished the exchange by bringing the parachutes on board. When she delivered the last chute, she found Cooper doing something interesting. He had sliced the chute open with a pocket knife, seemed to be removing the nylon cords. She watched as he took the cords and wrapped them around the canvas bag full of money, making a loop at the top to use as a handle. Because they had not given him the money in a backpack, Cooper was improvising a way to carry the bag with him when he jumped. This was yet another clue to his possible identity, as it showed the type of resourcefulness that might have been part of a military background. Finally, with passengers cleared and all Cooper's demanded items on board, the hijacker gave his instruction for the flight's final destination. His orders were very specific. He wanted the pilot to take the plane along a southeast course toward Mexico City at the minimum airspeed possible without stalling the aircraft and at a maximum 10,000-foot altitude. Cooper also specified the landing gear must remain deployed, the wing flaps must be lowered 15 degrees, and the cabin must remain unpressurized. The captain informed Cooper that if the aircraft followed his specification, it would only be able to travel about 1,000 miles before it would need to be refueled again, well short of his Mexico City destination. After a few minutes of discussion, the pair agreed on Reno as the refueling destination. In truth, though, Cooper did not care where the plane stopped, as he planned to be long gone before the aircraft touched down again. A few minutes later, the 727 began to climb into the skies again, and now Tina Mucklow was all alone with Cooper in the cabin once again. She had managed to guarantee the safety of 39 passengers and crew, leaving only her, the 3 pilots, and the hijacker left on board. Around 8 p.m., Cooper asked Mucklow to help him open the aft staircase. Originally, he had wanted the staircase open during the whole flight, but he had been told that it was unsafe to take off with the door open, so he agreed to lower the staircase once they were airborne. And once the plane was back in the air, Cooper wasted no time executing the final steps in his plan. He told Tina to go up to the cockpit, close the curtain partition between the coach, first class sections, and not look back. And soon after she joined the other crew members in the cockpit, a warning light flashed that indicated the staircase had been deployed. At approximately 8:13 p.m., the aircraft's tail section suddenly pitched upward, most likely from the counterforce of Cooper's jump off the back of the plane, and of course, because nobody else was left in the cabin when the man that called himself Dan Cooper actually made his jump, there's no knowing for certain what his final moments in the 727 were like. The sky was dark, with heavy cloud cover and driving rain. Cooper would have had no way of knowing exactly where he was or what was waiting for him below. Maybe he hesitated, the cool demeanor he had shown all day finally cracking. Or perhaps he jumped without fear, confident in his own abilities to survive whatever waited for him in the darkness. Either way, once the plane finally landed in Reno, and the last remaining crew members, including Tina Mucklow, were at last set free from their terrifying ordeal, Cooper was nowhere to be found. He had leapt into the darkness, leaving only the scantiest pieces of evidence behind. One of American history's greatest heists was finished, but the true mystery to identify the man behind the crime was just beginning.